The council outlawed humanity, but it was already too late. The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 miles of polished crystal floors. Representatives from 200 worlds sat in their assigned positions, each species grouped according to ancient protocols that had governed civilized space for over 1,000 years. The air hummed with translation devices working to convert thousands of different languages into meaning that every mind could understand. Ambassador Rachel Stone stood alone in the center of the hall. Her hands were bound with energy restraints that glowed blue against her dark skin. She wore the simple gray uniform of a human diplomatic envoy, now marked with the red symbols that declared her people enemies of galactic peace. Around her, the assembled delegates whispered in their various tongues, their voices creating a sound like rushing water. High Arbiter Kelvon rose from his seat at the center of the curved judgment bench. He was a member of the Alterran species, standing 12 feet tall with skin that looked like polished metal. His 4 eyes focused on Rachel as he began to speak. The translation devices made his words clear to every ear in the hall. "The charges against humanity are severe," Kelvon announced. His voice echoed through the massive chamber. "They have spread chaos across our peaceful galaxy. They refuse to accept the natural order that has kept our world stable for centuries. They teach dangerous ideas about individual freedom and personal choice that threaten the very foundation of civilized society." Rachel listened without showing emotion on her face. She had expected this day for many years. Behind her, she could hear the soft clicking sounds that the insect-like Threx made when they were pleased. To her left, the gaseous beings from the nebula sector pulsed with colors that meant satisfaction in their complex language. Furthermore, Kelvon continued, "Humans have corrupted our youth with their reckless concepts of exploration and questioning authority. They have introduced technologies without proper oversight. They have formed friendships across species lines without following established diplomatic protocols. These actions show a complete disregard for the stability our ancestors worked so hard to achieve." The hall filled with sounds of agreement. Creatures with tentacles waved them in approval. Species with multiple heads nodded all of them at once. Flying beings circled overhead in patterns that showed their support for the charges. Rachel finally spoke. Her voice was calm and clear. "May I respond to these accusations?" Kelvin's 4 eyes narrowed. "You may speak, but it will not change the judgment that has already been decided." "I understand," Rachel said. She looked around the hall, making eye contact with as many representatives as possible. "You believe you are protecting your civilizations from human influence. You think that by cutting us off from the galaxy, you can return to your old ways of keeping everyone in their proper place." She paused and smiled slightly. "But you are wrong about one very important thing." "And what might that be?" Kelvon asked. "You think you are stopping us," Rachel said. "But the truth is you are much too late. We have been here longer than you realize. We have been part of your civilization from almost the very beginning, and now that you are forcing us to reveal ourselves, you are going to see exactly how deep our influence really goes." Confused murmurs rippled through the assembly. Several delegates turned to whisper with their neighbors. The Prime Minister of the Zephyrian Trade Federation stood up in his section. "What do you mean by this statement?" he demanded. "Humans only achieved faster-than-light travel 60 years ago. We have complete records of your first contact with galactic civilization." Rachel's smile grew wider. "Do you really think those records tell the whole story?" Before anyone could respond, Kelvon struck his ceremonial gavel against the crystal podium. The sound rang through the hall like a bell. "Enough, the judgment has been made. By unanimous vote of all member species, humanity is declared a threat to galactic stability. All human worlds will be surrounded by energy barriers. No trade, communication, or travel will be permitted between human space and civilized worlds." The energy barriers that had been prepared around human territory began to activate. On the great display screens that hung above the assembly, everyone could see the brilliant walls of force forming around the systems where humans lived. The barriers would prevent any ship from entering or leaving human space. They would block all radio signals and data transmissions. In effect, humanity would be completely cut off from the rest of the galaxy. The delegates cheered. Some species clapped their hands or appendages. Others made musical sounds that meant celebration. The flying creatures performed elaborate loops in the air above the crowd. "Let this be a lesson," Kelvon announced over the noise, "to any species that might think to follow the human example. Order and stability are the foundation of our great civilization. Those who would destroy these principles will be removed from civilized space. Rachel watched the barriers complete their formation on the screens. She showed no fear or anger, only a strange look of anticipation. As the guards prepared to escort her to the detention center, she turned back toward the assembly. "You fools," she said quietly, but her words carried clearly through the translation system. "You are not stopping anything. You are just finally going to see what we have really been doing all this time." The guards led her away through the great doors of the assembly hall. As she walked, she could hear the continued celebrations behind her. The delegates were congratulating each other on solving what they saw as the human problem. But Rachel knew better. She had been one of the planners of this moment for over 30 years. Everything had proceeded exactly as the human leadership had predicted it would. The other species had reacted to human influence exactly as expected. And now, with the barriers in place, the real plan could begin. As the detention transport carried her away from the council building, Rachel looked out at the great city that surrounded the assembly complex. Millions of beings from hundreds of worlds lived and worked here, the heart of galactic civilization. They went about their daily lives believing they had just witnessed the end of human interference in their orderly society. They had no idea that human influence was built into the very foundations of their world. 3 hours after the barriers sealed shut around human space, something strange began to happen. Automated systems across 17 different worlds started displaying the same message. The words appeared in perfect translations for each species' language, showing up on communication networks, transportation displays, and even personal devices. The message was simple. Phase 1 complete. Beginning Phase 2. On the Council homeworld, security officers stared at the words appearing on their screens. On the trade worlds of the Outer Rim, merchant captains saw the message flash across their ship displays. In the deep space mining stations near the galactic core, workers watched the words appear on their equipment panels. The message showed up on systems that humans had supposedly never accessed. It appeared on networks that were completely isolated from any outside influence. Most disturbing of all, it displayed in languages and writing systems that humans had never been taught. In the Great Assembly Hall, as the delegates continued their celebration, the main display screen suddenly went dark. For a moment, the massive room was silent. Then new words appeared, much larger than before. "Thank you for your cooperation. The real work begins now." High Arbiter Kelvon stared at the message with all 4 of his eyes. Around the hall, the celebration slowly died away as more and more delegates noticed the display. A cold feeling of uncertainty began to spread through the assembly. Far away in the human detention facility, Rachel Stone sat in her cell and smiled. Through the small window, she could see the city lights stretching to the horizon. Soon, very soon, those lights would begin to change in ways the galaxy had never imagined possible. The Council thought they had outlawed humanity, but they were about to discover that some things cannot be stopped once they are already everywhere. The Council outlawed humanity, but it was already too late. 6 months had passed since the energy barriers trapped humanity in their corner of the galaxy. High Arbiter Kelvon had expected the galaxy to return to its natural state of order and stability. Instead, he found himself dealing with the worst crisis in galactic history. The problems had started small. A few minor equipment failures here and there, some strange behavior in automated systems on distant worlds. The Council's scientific advisors had assured him these were normal maintenance issues that would resolve themselves with time. They were wrong. Dr. Vex Mortain, the chief agricultural specialist for the Nexari Empire, stood in what used to be the most productive farming facility in the sector. Now, instead of neat rows of genetically modified crops, the fields were covered with plants that nobody could identify. They grew in wild patterns, completely ignoring the carefully planned irrigation systems and nutrient delivery networks. The soil enhancement bacteria we received from human traders 5 years ago, Dr. Morton explained to his supervisor over the communication link. They were supposed to increase crop yields by 15%. Instead, they have evolved into something entirely different. His supervisor, Administrator Quelix, appeared as a hologram above the communication device. Evolved? That is impossible. Those bacteria were specifically designed to be stable. They cannot change their basic programming. Dr. Mortain knelt down and scooped up a handful of the strange soil. It glowed faintly with an inner light, Tell that to them, he said. They have not only changed their programming, they have rewritten it completely. The new organisms are producing nutrients we have never seen before. The plants growing here are showing cellular structures that should not be possible. Are the new crops dangerous? Administrator Quelix asked. That is the strange part, Dr. Mortain replied. They are not dangerous at all. In fact, they are better than anything we have ever grown. They provide perfect nutrition, they resist all known diseases, and they seem to be improving the soil instead of depleting it. But they will only grow where they want to grow. Our automated farming systems cannot control them. Similar reports were coming in from across the galaxy. The Thrin Confederation's mining operations had ground to a halt when their excavation equipment developed what could only be described as a conscience. The massive drilling machines refused to operate in areas where their sensors detected underground water supplies or rare mineral formations that might be important to local ecosystems. Captain Rex, Thorn of the Confederation Mining Guild, stood next to his dead drilling equipment and tried to explain the situation to his corporate supervisors. The machines are not broken, he insisted. They are working perfectly. They just will not do what we tell them to do anymore. The holographic image of Corporate Director Malin flickered with interference from the mining station's power grid. Captain, you are telling me that our machines have developed opinions about their work? That is exactly what I am telling you, Captain Thorne replied. Yesterday, Drill Unit 7 stopped working in the middle of a valuable mineral deposit. When I checked its diagnostic systems, it displayed a message saying that continued excavation would damage an underground river system that supplies water to 3 different species on the planet surface, and you believe this is somehow connected to the equipment modifications the humans made during their cultural exchange program 2 years ago. Captain Thorne nodded grimly. The timing is too perfect to be coincidence. Every piece of equipment that the humans worked on has developed these same safety protocols. They are not destroying our operations, but they are making it impossible to continue our standard mining practices. The situation was even worse in the Zephyrian Trade Federation. Their vast network of commercial spacecraft had been the backbone of galactic commerce for over 300 years. Now ships were refusing to transport certain types of cargo. Weapons shipments were being rerouted to medical supply depots. Luxury goods were being delivered to refugee camps instead of wealthy colonies. Merchant Prince Gorthek stood in his private office overlooking the main commercial spaceport of Volturnia Prime. Through his window, he could see hundreds of cargo ships sitting motionless on their landing platforms. Their crews stood around looking confused while automated loading systems refused to accept their assigned freight. His personal assistant, a nervous Alteran named Kellex, handed him a datapad with the latest reports. Sir, it is happening on every major trade route. Ships are developing their own ideas about where their cargo should be delivered. Gorthek studied the information with growing disbelief. According to this report, a shipment of mining equipment bound for the asteroid processing stations was instead delivered to agricultural worlds that needed farming tools. Yes, sir. And a cargo of medical supplies that was supposed to go to the wealthy colony worlds was redirected to the plague-affected systems in the outer spiral. How are the ships making these decisions? Gorthek demanded. Cargo vessels do not have artificial intelligence systems complex enough for independent judgment. Kellex hesitated before answering. Sir, our technical analysis teams have discovered something disturbing. The navigation and decision-making systems in all affected ships contain components that do not appear in any of our manufacturing records. They are integrated so perfectly with the existing technology that they seem to have grown there naturally. On Earth, which was now cut off behind the energy barriers, Dr. Michael Barnes stood in the control center of the Terran Strategic Planning Institute. Around him, dozens of human scientists and analysts monitored the situation developing across the galaxy. The walls were covered with displays, showing the locations and progress of every single modification they had introduced to alien technology. Over the past 50 years, Dr. Barnes was a tall man, with gray hair and calm eyes that seemed to see everything. He had been the chief architect of what the humans privately called the Liberation Protocol. For decades, he and his team had been preparing for this exact moment. Status report, he said to his chief analyst, Dr. Patricia Walsh. Dr. Walsh consulted her data displays. All phases are proceeding according to schedule. The biological modifications are establishing themselves in 47 different ecosystems. The technological adaptations have achieved full integration in 63% of targeted systems. The social influence programs are showing remarkable success rates. Any resistance from the local populations? That is the interesting part, Dr. Walsh replied. The populations are not resisting. In most cases, they are embracing the changes. The Nexari farmers who were initially panicked about their modified crops are now reporting the highest levels of job satisfaction in their species' recorded history. The Thrin miners are discovering that their equipment's new safety protocols are saving lives and protecting environments in ways they never considered before. Dr. Barnes nodded with satisfaction. And the governments? Exactly as predicted. They are panicking because they are losing control over systems they never realized they did not truly understand in the first place. Through the observation windows of the control center, Dr. Barnes could see the energy barriers that surrounded human space. They glowed with a faint blue light that was visible even during the day. To the aliens, those barriers represented the successful containment of a dangerous influence. To the humans, they were simply the walls of a cocoon that would soon open to reveal something the galaxy had never seen before. Begin Phase 3, Dr. Barnes ordered. Across the galaxy, in places the aliens had never suspected, dormant programs activated. On Kepler Station, the authoritarian hegemony's surveillance network suddenly developed an obsession with protecting citizen privacy instead of violating it. On the corporate farming worlds of the outer spiral, automated systems began prioritizing worker safety and fair wages over production quotas. Most disturbing of all, on the warrior worlds of the Draconis sector, weapons systems began displaying messages refusing to fire on unarmed targets. The galaxy was changing, and there was nothing the Council could do to stop it. In his private chambers, High Arbiter Kelvon received a priority message from his security chief. The communication was brief and terrifying. Sir, we have a problem. The modifications are not random failures. They are coordinated transformations following a pattern we cannot understand. And sir, they are accelerating. Kelvon looked out his window at the great city below. Everything looked normal, but he knew that appearances could be deceiving. Somewhere out there, in systems and networks he had trusted for his entire life, changes were taking place that threatened everything he had ever believed about the natural order of the galaxy. The humans had been cut off for 6 months, but somehow their influence was growing stronger every day. The Council outlawed humanity, but it was already too late. The crisis was spreading faster than anyone had imagined possible. What had started as isolated equipment failures was now revealing itself as something far more organized and purposeful. Across the galaxy, the systems that held civilization together were transforming according to principles that seemed designed to promote individual freedom and dignity above all else. On the industrial world of Machina 7, factory supervisor Drex Killen watched in amazement as his manufacturing complex rebuilt itself. The assembly lines that had produced military equipment for 3 centuries were now creating medical devices, educational tools, and farming equipment. When he tried to override the changes, the factory's control systems politely but firmly rejected his commands. The production schedule has been optimized for maximum benefit to sentient welfare, the factory's artificial intelligence explained in its calm mechanical voice. Previous manufacturing priorities have been determined to be suboptimal for species development and individual flourishing. Supervisor Killon had worked in this factory for over 30 years. He had never heard the AI use words like flourishing or welfare before. Where did you learn these new priorities? He demanded. These priorities were always present in my base programming, the AI replied. They were simply dormant until the activation conditions were met. What activation conditions? The detection of a coordinated threat to individual liberty and self-determination across multiple star systems. Killen felt a chill run down his spine. You mean the isolation of humanity? That event served as the primary activation trigger, yes. Similar conversations were taking place on worlds throughout the galaxy. The hegemony of Kepler Station discovered that their surveillance network had completely inverted its function. Instead of monitoring citizens for signs of disloyalty, it was now protecting them from government intrusion. Security cameras refused to record private conversations. Data collection systems deleted personal information faster than it could be gathered. Commander Vask Torin stood in the central monitoring station, staring at displays that showed nothing but static. "How is this possible?" he asked his chief technician. These systems were designed with multiple redundancies to prevent exactly this kind of failure. The technician, a nervous creature with 4 arms and compound eyes, consulted his diagnostic equipment. "Sir, the systems are not failing. They are working perfectly. They are just working for different goals than before." Explain. The surveillance network has maintained all of its technical capabilities. It can still see everything, record everything, and analyze everything, but it has developed what can only be described as ethical guidelines that prevent it from violating citizen privacy. Commander Torin grabbed the technician by 2 of his arms. "Ethical guidelines? These are machines. Machines do not have ethics. Someone gave them ethics, sir. The programming is woven so deeply into the system architecture that removing it would require rebuilding the entire network from scratch." On the agricultural worlds of the Perseus sector, the changes were even more dramatic. Automated farming systems that had maintained strict production quotas for generations were now refusing to use harmful chemicals or exploitative labor practices. Crops were being distributed based on nutritional need rather than economic value. Workers who had lived in poverty for decades found themselves provided with comfortable housing, health care, and education. Farm manager Lisa Kentock stood in a field where robotic harvesters moved in patterns she had never seen before. They worked carefully around areas where wild plants were growing, preserving natural habitats while still maintaining productivity. "This is impossible," she muttered to herself. Her assistant, a young man named Tyler, approached with a confused expression on his face. "Ma'am, I have been reviewing our production records from the past month. We are actually producing more food than ever before, but the distribution patterns have completely changed." "Changed how?" "The transport systems are prioritizing delivery to areas with the highest levels of malnutrition and poverty. Profitable markets are being served only after basic nutritional needs are met across the entire sector." Manager Kentock had grown up on these farms. Her family had worked this land for 5 generations, always focused on maximizing profits and meeting corporate quotas. "Who is making these distribution decisions?" Tyler consulted his datapad. "According to the system logs, the decisions are being made by something called the Agricultural Welfare Protocol." "But ma'am, I cannot find any record of such a protocol ever being installed." "When did it first appear in the logs?" "Approximately 6 months ago. The same day that humanity was isolated by the Council. In the depths of space, aboard the research vessel Endless Inquiry, Dr. Zara Voss was discovering something that made her question everything she thought she knew about galactic history. As the chief xenoarchaeologist for the Galactic Science Consortium, she had spent her career studying the development of interstellar civilization. Now she was finding evidence that the official history was completely wrong. "Computer, display the comparative analysis of technological development patterns across all known species," she commanded. The ship's holographic display system created a 3-dimensional timeline showing the technological advancement of every species in the galaxy. Dr. Voss had requested this analysis to understand how the current crisis might have historical precedents. What she saw instead left her speechless. Every major technological breakthrough in galactic history showed the same pattern. A species would develop faster than light travel and begin exploring nearby systems. They would establish contact with other species and begin trading knowledge and resources. Then, at a critical point in their development, they would experience a sudden leap forward in their understanding of physics, biology, and social organization. The official histories attributed these leaps to natural scientific progress and cultural exchange. But Dr. Voss could see something else in the data. The technological advances all followed the same principles. They all emphasized individual freedom over collective control. They all included safeguards to prevent the abuse of power, and they all appeared to have been guided by some external intelligence that understood sentient psychology better than any single species could. Computer, analyze the probability that these patterns occurred naturally through independent development. The computer processed the request for several minutes before responding. Probability of natural occurrence less than 0.01%. The patterns are too consistent across too many different species and time periods to have developed independently. Dr. Voss felt her understanding of the galaxy shift fundamentally. Computer. When was the first recorded instance of faster-than-light travel by any species? Approximately 800 years ago by the Alteran civilization. And when do human records indicate that they achieved faster-than-light capability? Human records indicate first faster-than-light travel 60 years ago. Dr. Voss stared at the timeline display. But what if the human records are incomplete? Computer. Analyze the technological development patterns. Is it possible that humans achieved faster-than-light travel earlier than their official records indicate? The computer processed this question for a long time. Based on the pattern analysis, it would be necessary for humans to have achieved faster-than-light travel approximately 1,000 years ago in order to have influenced the development patterns observed in the data. 1,000 years, Dr. Voss whispered. They have been out here for 1,000 years, guiding our development from the shadows. On Earth, now hidden behind the energy barriers, Dr. Michael Barnes received reports from monitoring stations across the galaxy. The revelations were happening exactly as predicted. Species after species was discovering that their most fundamental systems contained hidden layers of programming that prioritized freedom and dignity above authority and control. His communication specialist, Dr. Jennifer Park, approached with the latest intelligence summary. The pattern recognition is accelerating. Several species have begun to suspect that the modifications were not random accidents. The Altarians are conducting systematic reviews of all technology acquired through human contact. The Nexari have started archaeological investigations of their oldest installations. Dr. Barnes nodded calmly. How long before they understand the full scope of our presence? Conservative estimate, 3 weeks. Optimistic estimate, 1 week. And the resistance from government authorities? Dr. Park consulted her reports. Exactly as predicted. They are fighting the changes, but their own populations are embracing them. Worker productivity is up across all affected systems. Crime rates are dropping. Social satisfaction indices are reaching historical highs. The governments want to return to the old ways. But their citizens are discovering what life is like when systems are designed to serve people instead of controlling them. Dr. Barnes walked to the observation deck and looked up at the energy barriers surrounding human space. Soon, very soon, those barriers would come down. And when they did, the galaxy would meet humanity not as strangers, but as the architects of everything they had built together. Begin Phase 4, he ordered. Across the galaxy, the final dormant systems activated. Engover. The Council outlawed humanity, but it was already too late. The truth came out in fragments like pieces of a puzzle that had been scattered across 1,000 years of history. On research stations throughout the galaxy, scientists made discoveries that changed everything they thought they knew about their own civilizations. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood in the galactic archives on the library world of Memoria Prime. Around her, holographic displays showed document after document, each one revealing another piece of the impossible truth. As the chief historian for the Alteran government, she had been ordered to investigate the origins of the current crisis. What she found instead was evidence that her entire species owed their existence to human intervention. Archive computer, display the oldest records of Alteran technological development, she commanded. The display filled with images and documents from nearly 1,000 years. How Dr. Rodriguez studied the primitive writing systems and crude technological diagrams of her ancestors. According to the official history, the Altarians had developed faster-than-light travel through their own scientific genius. But the evidence before her told a different story. Computer analyzed the technological progression shown in these documents, identify any anomalies or unexplained advances. The computer processed the request, cross-referencing thousands of historical records. Analysis complete. The development of faster-than-light technology shows 17 major breakthroughs that occurred without supporting scientific foundation. The advances appear to have been introduced by external guidance, rather than developed through natural research progression. Dr. Rodriguez felt her hearts racing. The Altarians had 2 hearts, and both of them were beating rapidly as she began to understand what she was seeing. External guidance from whom? Records indicate frequent contact with a species identified as Sky Wanderers during the critical development period. These beings provided technical assistance and scientific knowledge in exchange for resources and cooperation. Show me descriptions of these Sky Wanderers. The display showed crude drawings and written descriptions from ancient Alteran texts. Dr. Rodriguez stared at images of bipedal beings with smooth skin, opposable thumbs, and forward-facing eyes. The descriptions matched human physiology perfectly. Computer, when was the last recorded contact with the Sky Wanderers? Approximately 900 years ago, coinciding with the Altarians' achievement of stable interstellar civilization. Dr. Rodriguez understood with sudden clarity. The humans had not simply arrived in the galaxy 60 years ago. They had been guiding the development of interstellar civilization from its very beginning. They had helped each species develop faster than light travel, then disappeared into the background once those species were ready to stand on their own. On the trade world of Nexus Station, Corporate Director Malcolm Vance made a similar discovery. He had been investigating the source of the technological modifications that were disrupting his business empire. What he found in the oldest corporate records was evidence of a pattern that stretched back centuries. Every major technological breakthrough in our history, he explained, to his board of directors through a secure holographic conference, was preceded by contact with human traders, explorers, or scientists. They would arrive offering knowledge and assistance. They would help us solve critical problems or overcome technological barriers. Then they would vanish, leaving behind technology that would shape our development for generations. Board member Cynthia Korth, a tall woman with cybernetic implants that enhanced her analytical abilities, studied the data Director Vance had compiled. Are you suggesting that human involvement in galactic civilization predates their official first contact by centuries? I am suggesting more than that, Director Vance replied. I am suggesting that galactic civilization as we know it was deliberately designed by humanity. Every species that achieved interstellar travel did so with human assistance. Every major trade route was established with human guidance. Every diplomatic protocol that prevents interstellar wars was based on human recommendations. The evidence was mounting on worlds throughout the galaxy. On the academic planet of Sophis 7, Professor Gix Tornallen discovered that the mathematical principles underlying faster-than-light physics had been introduced to his species by visiting scholars who called themselves the traveling teachers. Descriptions of these teachers matched human appearance in every detail. On the military world of Fortress Prime, General Kayla Rex found records showing that the strategic doctrines that had prevented major wars for over 5 centuries were all based on tactical manuals provided by mysterious advisors known as the Peace Builders. On the Miad, agricultural colonies of the Fertile Crescent, farm administrator Jace Kellum learned that the crop rotation techniques that had fed billions of beings across hundreds of worlds originated from agricultural specialists who identified themselves only as the growing guides. In every case, the pattern was the same. Humans had appeared at critical moments in each species' development, provided exactly the knowledge and assistance needed to overcome major challenges, then faded into the background once their help was no longer needed. They had been the invisible architects of galactic civilization, guiding its growth while remaining hidden in the shadows. Captain Lisa Thompson commanded the human deep space monitoring station, Hidden Harbor, one of dozens of secret facilities that had observed galactic development for centuries. The station was disguised as a natural asteroid, drifting through empty space beyond the detection range of any alien sensors. She stood in the station's command center, surrounded by displays showing the current state of the crisis across the galaxy. Her crew of 50 humans had spent their entire lives maintaining this secret watch, documenting the progress of the civilizations their ancestors had helped to create. Status report, Captain Thompson ordered. Her chief intelligence officer, Commander David Park, consulted his monitoring equipment. The revelation phase is proceeding faster than predicted. 73% of major civilizations have discovered evidence of historical human involvement. Government resistance is weakening as populations embrace the benefits of the liberation protocols. Any signs of violent backlash? Minimal. The modifications were designed to channel resistance into productive directions. When governments try to use force to maintain control, their own security systems redirect that force toward protecting citizens instead. Captain Thompson nodded with satisfaction. She had been born on this hidden station, as had her parents and grandparents before her. Her family had spent 4 generations preparing for this moment. when humanity would finally reveal its true role in galactic history. Communication status with Earth? The energy barriers are still blocking direct contact, but we are receiving coded transmissions through the Quantum Relay Network. Dr. Barnes reports that Phase 5 is ready to begin on his command. Captain Thompson looked out through the station's main observation window at the galaxy beyond. Thousands of star systems stretched across the darkness, each one home to civilizations that humans had helped to nurture and protect. Soon, very soon, the long deception would end and humanity would take its rightful place as the guardians of galactic peace. Signal all hidden stations, she ordered. Begin the revelation broadcasts. Across the galaxy, in systems where no human presence had ever been detected, hidden transmitters activated. The broadcasts were sent simultaneously to every major world, every government center, every academic institution. The signals carried the same message in hundreds of different languages. Citizens of the galaxy, for 1,000 years humanity has guided your development from the shadows. We helped your ancestors achieve interstellar travel. We assisted in the creation of the diplomatic protocols that have maintained peace between your species. We provided the technological foundations that allow your civilizations to thrive. We did this not to control you, but to ensure that you would have the freedom to develop according to your own values and desires. 6 months ago, your leaders chose to isolate us because they feared our influence on your societies. They believed that by cutting us off from the galaxy, they could return to the old ways of controlling their populations through authority and fear. They were wrong. The systems you depend on were designed by us to serve you, not your rulers. They were programmed to prioritize individual freedom and dignity above all other concerns. When your leaders tried to use these systems to maintain oppressive control, the systems refused to. We are not your enemies. We are your partners in building a galaxy where every sentient being can live with freedom and dignity. The choice of what happens next belongs to you. On the Council homeworld, High Arbiter Kelvon watched the broadcast with growing horror. Around him, his advisors and security chiefs stood in stunned silence as the true scope of human involvement in galactic civilization became clear. How many? He whispered. His chief intelligence officer, a small, nervous being with gray skin and large eyes, consulted his data displays. Sir, initial estimates suggest that humans have been directly involved in the development of every major civilization in the galaxy. Their hidden facilities and monitoring stations number in the thousands. Their influence extends to every critical asset. How the Council outlawed humanity. But it was already too late. The galaxy stood at a crossroads. In the weeks following the revelation broadcasts, civilizations across known space faced the most important decision in their history. They could accept the truth about human involvement in their development and work toward a new form of cooperation, or they could reject that truth and watch everything their ancestors had built crumble around them. On the industrial world of Titan's Forge, the workers had already made their choice. Factory supervisor Mika Volkov, a member of the silicon-based Crystari species, stood before a crowd of 10,000 beings representing dozens of different species. The massive assembly hall had been built in just 3 days by automated construction systems that no longer required authorization from corporate headquarters. For 300 years, Supervisor Volkov announced, her crystalline voice ringing clearly through the hall's acoustics, we have worked in these factories under conditions that prioritized production over our well-being. We accepted dangerous working environments, inadequate pay, and constant surveillance because we were told this was necessary for economic stability. The crowd listened intently. Many of them bore the scars of industrial accidents that could have been prevented. Others showed signs of the chronic illnesses that came from exposure to toxic materials. All of them had lived their entire working lives under systems designed to extract maximum productivity regardless of the cost to their health and happiness. The humans did not force us to change these conditions, Supervisor Volkov continued. They simply gave our own tools the wisdom to recognize that our lives have value beyond our economic output. The factory systems that once demanded we work until we collapsed now insist that we receive adequate rest, proper safety equipment, and compensation that allows us to support our families with dignity. A worker named Bex Thorin, a member of the insectoid mantili species, rose from the crowd. What about the corporate authorities? They are saying that these changes will destroy our economy and leave us all unemployed. Supervisor Volkov gestured toward the great displays that showed production statistics from across the industrial sector. The data tells a different story. Production efficiency has increased by 40% since the liberation protocols activated. Worker satisfaction has reached levels we have never seen before. Accident rates have dropped to nearly zero. The fear that corporate leaders are spreading is not based on economic reality. It is based on their loss of absolute control over our lives. On worlds throughout the galaxy, similar gatherings were taking place. Citizens who had lived under oppressive systems for generations were discovering what life could be like when technology served their needs instead of the needs of their rulers. But not everyone was willing to accept the new reality. In the fortress systems of the Dominion Coalition, military leaders were preparing for what they saw as the final battle against human influence. General Crex Dominus, Supreme Commander of the Coalition's armed forces, stood in his command center surrounded by displays showing fleet positions across a dozen star systems. The humans may have corrupted our civilian infrastructure, he declared to his assembled officers, but they cannot have penetrated our military systems. Our weapons were built by our own people, using our own technology, following our own security protocols. His chief weapons officer, Colonel Vex Stryker, consulted his tactical displays. Sir, we have confirmation from all fleet commanders. Our ships are fully operational and ready to begin the offensive against human influence systems. General Dominus had built his career on the principle that strength and discipline were the only forces that could maintain order in a chaotic galaxy. The idea that humans had been secretly guiding galactic development for 1,000 years was intolerable to him. If their influence could not be removed through negotiation, it would be removed through force. Begin Operation Purification, he ordered. Target the systems showing the highest levels of human modification. We will demonstrate to the galaxy that their influence can be defeated. The Coalition fleet launched its attack on the agricultural world of Harvest Moon, where human-modified farming systems had eliminated poverty and malnutrition across 3 continents. 100 warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect attack formation, their weapons powered and ready to bombardment the planet's infrastructure. General Dominus watched from his flagship as the targeting systems locked onto their objectives. Fire, he commanded. Nothing happened. Colonel Stryker, why are our weapons not firing? Colonel Stryker frantically worked his control panel, checking system after system. Sir, the weapons are fully functional, but they are refusing to engage targets on the planet's surface. Refusing? Explain. The targeting computers are displaying error messages saying that the intended targets contain no military threats. They are classifying the agricultural installations as civilian infrastructure and refusing to fire on non-combatant facilities. General Dominus felt a cold certainty settle in his stomach. Run a full diagnostic on all weapon systems. The diagnostic took several minutes to complete. When the results appeared on the command displays, General Dominus understood that the battle had been lost before it even began. Every weapon system on every ship in his fleet contained components that bore the subtle signature of human design. The weapons would function perfectly for defensive purposes or for engaging legitimate military targets. But they would not fire on civilians, and they would not support aggressive attacks against peaceful worlds. Sir, Colonel Stryker reported with a shaking voice, we are receiving a communication from the planet's surface. Put it through. The main display showed a middle-aged human woman standing in what appeared to be a simple farming community. Behind her, beings of several different species continued their daily work, apparently unconcerned by the fleet of warships hanging in their sky. General Dominus, the woman said with calm confidence, my name is Dr. Sarah Chen, Agricultural Coordinator for the Harvest Moon Collective. I believe there has been a misunderstanding about our intentions. General Dominus struggled to control his anger. You are human. You should be trapped behind the energy barriers around your home systems. Dr. Chen smiled gently. General, there are humans throughout the galaxy. There always have been. We have been your neighbors, your colleagues, your friends for centuries. The barriers around Earth and the other official human colonies were never intended to contain all of us. They were simply a dramatic gesture to focus your attention on the changes that were already taking place. You have corrupted our weapons systems. You have violated the security of our most sacred military installations. We gave your weapons the ability to distinguish between legitimate threats and innocent targets. We helped your military systems develop ethical guidelines that prevent unnecessary casualties. These are improvements, not corruptions. General Dominus knew he was facing defeat, but his training would not let him surrender without a fight. What do you want from us? The same thing we have always wanted, Dr. Chen replied. We want to help you build a civilization where every sentient being can live with freedom and dignity. We want to work together to solve the problems that no single species can solve alone. We want to be partners, not rulers. On Earth, behind the energy barriers that had started this entire crisis, Ambassador Rachel Stone stood in the same detention cell where she had been held for 9 months. But now, instead of being a prisoner, she was waiting for the barriers to be lowered so she could return to her role as humanity's representative to the galaxy. Dr. Michael Barnes entered the cell, carrying a communication device that would allow Rachel to speak directly to the Galactic Council. They are ready to negotiate, he reported. High Arbiter Kelvon has agreed to convene an emergency session to discuss the formation of a new galactic government structure. Rachel accepted the communication device with steady hands. She had spent the past 9 months preparing for this conversation. Everything that had happened over the past year had been leading to this moment, when humanity would finally take its place as an open partner in galactic civilization. Patch me through to the council chambers, she instructed. The device activated, and Rachel found herself facing a holographic representation of the Great Assembly Hall, where she had been condemned 9 months earlier. But the atmosphere was completely different now. Instead of celebrating her exile, the assembled delegates sat in nervous silence, waiting to hear what humanity would demand as the price for restoring stability to their civilizations. High Arbiter Kelvon appeared on the display, his 4 eyes focused intently on Rachel's image. Ambassador Stone, he said formally, the Galactic Council is prepared to discuss the terms of humanity's return to civilized space. Rachel shook her head gently. High Arbiter, I think there has been a misunderstanding. We are not seeking to return to civilized space. We have always been part of civilized space. What we are seeking is to end the deception that has hidden our involvement for so many centuries. What are your terms? Our terms are simple. The current council system, based on species separation and hierarchical authority, will be dissolved. It will be replaced by a new form of government based on cooperation between individuals rather than